All right, everybody, welcome back into Cherry Pickin. Today's video, buy low, sell high goalies for the rest of the fantasy hockey season. We've got 6 goalies to talk about here, 2 to buy low on, 2 to sell high on, and then 2 goalies that should be available on your waiver wire that you should be keeping an eye on. Potentially could be kind of overtaking a starting role or being a 50-50 split at this point just because of how well they've been playing recently. As always, the video is presented by FanDuel Canada. That link is in the description below to download the app today. Let's get into today's video. All right, so the first goalie we have is Filip on the Minnesota Wild. We're going to be selling high on him for the rest of the season. To start the season, Gus was unreal. I had him on my team. I actually just traded him as well. The first 2 months, it was him and Hellebuck in terms of top fantasy hockey goalies and overall goaltenders. If you look at the month of October, he had a 217 goals against, 922 save percentage, 4 wins. November was probably the best goalie in the NHL with a 199 goals against, 932 save percentage, and 7 wins. In December, he got hurt in the middle of it, and when he came back from that injury was really when we've seen his play decline at this point. In January, a 435 goals against, an 863 save percentage, and just 1 win in that month. The worst goal saved above expected since the start of January. First, at -6. These are like numbers we kind of saw at points last year with Gustavsson, who just really struggled. We've seen this throughout the course of his career because he had a really good year 2 years ago. Last year was a down year, and then he's having a really good season up until that injury, really. And I know right now that Faber's out, Spurgeon's out, Brodin remain out. Faber just came back, but Spurgeon and Brodin remain out at this point. And obviously this Minnesota team lacks defensively when these guys are out. How can't you? But I don't think it necessarily totally excuses how bad Gustavsson has been. Now, I understand it must sound weird that I'm saying that he's a sell high at this point because I'm just talking very negatively about his last month or so, but like the overarching theme of his fantasy hockey season is positive and very good. So I would trade him for either like a really good forward or another goalie. Even when everybody is healthy, I don't think he'll get back to that sub 2 goals against, 930 save percentage, which some people might associate him with still. I think it's probably closer to like a 3 goals against and a 910 save percentage. I wouldn't say the Wild are like a lock to make the playoffs either. Like, what if Gus continues to play like shit and then Wallstedt comes up for a short stint, plays unreal, and then takes over the net with him and Fleury as the tandem? That's like worst case scenario for Filip Gustavsson probably at this point, and Minnesota Wild fans to a certain degree because he was having a very good year. But we've seen that happen before, maybe not to that extreme, like Gustavsson would still be involved with the team, but like we've seen that happen before. It's not totally off the table. If you're looking at his month of January as well, he's lost 3 straight starts, and he's got pulled in that other start. His only good start was a shutout January 4th against Carolina, where he made 21 saves, and the Minnesota Wild won 4-0. I just think it's a lot to ask at this point to keep Gustavsson in that conversation with guys like Hellebuck or Vasilevsky and stuff like that. So I think you're better off trading him for the rest of the year and getting someone like hopefully maybe like a Blackwood. Maybe you can try to get Swayman at this point too, because he's been playing unbelievable recently. It really depends on what kind of league you're in. But yeah, I would try to move on from Filip Gustavsson at this point. All right, so the first guy we're going to be buying low on is Freddie Andersen on the Carolina Hurricanes. Yahoo Fantasy Hockey Leagues, he's still 66% rostered, so might be available in some of your leagues, but he was having an unreal start to the year before getting hurt. You could look at his stats here, right? Like just 5 games played at this point, 4 wins, 1 loss, 178 goals against, and a 930 save percentage. Carolina's going to win a lot of games. Even if he's splitting with Kochetkov, I still consider Andersen to be a fantasy goalie, hockey goalie you should want or is worth adding because he's not going to be worth a lot at this point, for one, if you're trying to trade for him. And like I said, he might be available on some of the waiver wires. Sure, he has a little bit of an injury history. Last year, he dealt with the blood clots and then came back and still played really well. This year's a knee injury where he had surgery on, so maybe it's a little bit different, but he did play well in that game against Chicago in his first start back. I believe it was on the road as well. It is Chicago, and he did let in 3 goals. But I think he just played pretty well. I don't think Carolina's playing the greatest stretch of hockey right now at this point. But you look at his stats last year, 184 goals against, 932 save percentage in 16 games. Year before that, 248 goals against, 903 save percentage in 34 games. I think it's worth trading for at this point. The upside is definitely there if he can stay healthy. And like, as I mentioned, I really don't think you're going to have to give up like a whole lot for him to get him. So why not? All right, goalie I'm selling high on for the rest of the season is Igor Shesterkin on the New York Rangers. Obviously one of the top goalies in the NHL for the last 3 to 4 years, but had a really shaky start to the year and is playing unbelievable right now. It's been the best month of his season by far. January, 173 goals against, 934 save percentage, and he's 4-0. Second in goals saved above expected over that span. So it's essentially the second best, or if not the best goalie of January. I don't know how sustainable these numbers are considering how brutal the Rangers continue to be defensively. He's third in the NHL in expected goals against, the Rangers are third in the NHL in expected goals against per game, third last, that being tied with the Ducks in actual goals against per game at just above 3, which is like more like middle of the pack, but they're also second last in high danger chances allowed per game. And you can kind of just see it. Like Igor gets hung out to dry all the time. Igor has a high danger save percentage in January at .867, which is very good. But if you look at his stats at other parts of the season, from November 1st to January 1st, his high danger save percentage is sub .810, which is solid, but it's not great. It ranks 23rd amongst qualified goaltenders over that span. Since signing his big contract, which he signed at the beginning of December 8th, 912 save percentage, a 268 goals against, and a 796 high danger save percentage. Definitely struggled right out of the gate since signing his contract, but has played a lot better recently. But I don't necessarily believe Igor can keep up how he's playing right now if the Rangers continue to play this poorly defensively and hang him out to dry. They have the 5th hardest remaining schedule as well. So how is this really going to change for Igor? He's just playing really, really well right now, which is awesome for your fantasy hockey team. But again, how sustainable is that? And I know it's hard to trade him when he's playing this well, but you're going to get his best, absolute best value of the season at this point if you trade him right now. I don't see the Rangers getting any better either for the rest of the year, because all I've heard this year is that they're going to be sellers at the deadline and continue to move players. So who could you get at this point for Vasilevsky? Not Vasilevsky, Shesterkin, maybe Vasilevsky. You could pretty much get, I would close to say, maybe not anybody, but like Swayman, Mackenzie Blackwood are two guys I kind of think of. Vasilevsky as well are guys I would try to go after. But Igor, especially with where the Rangers are, they're going to probably continue to lose games. I don't think he's worth owning, especially at the value that he's currently at. You can get someone much better, maybe get some draft picks or even a forward or a defenseman if you need to. All right, the next goalie we're buying low on is Connor Ingram on the Utah Hockey Club. He's 33% rostered in the Yahoo Fantasy Hockey League, so might be available for some people out there. But Ingram has really surprised me since coming back from injury. 926 save percentage, 2 goals against, 895 high danger save percentage, which is insanely impressive since the start of January. I was very out on him at the beginning of the year in the offseason, but Vejmelka at this point is just overworked with how much time Connor Ingram had to miss with this injury and amongst the other things that he's been dealing with. When Ingram was out from November 13th to January 10th, no goalie in the NHL started more games than Karel Vejmelka. He started 22 games. To his credit, his numbers were sick. 919 save percentage, a 231 goals against, 842 high danger save percentage. Those are like tops in the league, probably the top in the league in terms of what he was working with defensively and what you consider some of the other best goalies are. But in January, his numbers have really declined. Like 884 save percentage, a 302 goals against, and a 2-3-1 record. I think that could be wear and tear at this point. So maybe they lean on Ingram, who's a little bit fresher, if you could say that, considering he hasn't played a ton of games, has that bandwidth to kind of really like take it in. And maybe you ride Ingram here, and you pick up Ingram for very cheap, and you ride him for the rest of the home stretch of the fantasy hockey season, because at this point, it seems like a very feasible option, especially if you're in need of a goaltender, not willing to give up a whole lot. And in some of those 10 to 12-man leagues, or even I wouldn't say 14-man leagues, because I always get ripped on the comments for that. He's probably available to pick up. All right, 2 guys that could be potentially on your waiver wire right now. The first one, Leevi Merilainen. Talked about him in my must-add video that I dropped on Saturday, so if you haven't seen that, check that out. But Leevi Merilainen has been playing unreal with the absence of Linus Ullmark. This all depends on where Ullmark's injury kind of lands him, because I know he rejoined the team. He's doing more practices or doing drills in practice. I don't know how soon we're going to see him in full game attire and playing in a game. But I would think at this point, from the last I heard, he was considered week to week. Last week, I would still consider him at that point. So maybe he's not coming back for another week or so. I would still try to get Merilainen on the team, because it's probably going to be a 1-2 punch of him and Ullmark at this point. And Travis Green is probably going to be very worried about getting Linus Ullmark hurt if they're going to be continuing to vie for that playoff spot. So I would assume they actually could rely on Leevi, Merilainen also a little bit more if they want to give Ullmark a little bit more rest, considering he is a little bit younger as well. I talked about it in my must-add video, but this guy has been unreal in the third period. .950 save percentage in the third period throughout his season this year in the NHL, which is very impressive. Exactly what you want for a fantasy hockey goalie, considering he's very good in the clutch and secures wins for your fantasy hockey team. Very important for goalies in fantasy hockey. And then you have Forsberg and Sogard. Forsberg could be like that third goalie in terms of, like, let's say they do something like the Flyers, but I don't think he's really going to have a ton of impact on Merilainen at this point, considering his numbers have been tops in the NHL, I want to say, over his last 5 or 6 games. If you look at his stats for the year, .917 save percentage, a .220 goals against, 6-2-1, and his numbers have declined over the past like 3 or 4 days. So he's definitely someone I would look at trying to pick up. Don't know if I'd necessarily give up a ton to trade him, like in Connor Ingram territory, because he is about the same in terms of roster percentage. Merilainen 30% rostered, Ingram 33% rostered. But if he's on your waiver wire and you need a goalie, like, why not? And the last one, Jakub Dobes on the Montreal Canadiens. This guy has taken the league by storm. He's absolutely unreal. You can see his stats right there. 5-0 on the year, a .941 save percentage, a .155 goals against. His really only bad start was against the Rangers most recently, and the Habs still found a way to win that game in overtime. So why not pick him up if he's available? You know, Montreal's playing much better defensively. His goal saved above expected is +6. He's honestly been better than Montembeault since coming into the NHL, but he also doesn't have the strain of playing a lot more games and getting less rest than what Montembeault was getting, or more rest, excuse me. But when did they go to a 50-50 split? Like, that was a pretty demoralizing loss and bad loss against the Leafs. Montembeault kind of blew that game for them after going up or leading 3-0. So kind of what do you do there? And I think there's a little bit of ambiguity here as they need to decide, are they gunning for the playoff spot this year because they're right in that pocket for, or they continue gonna protect and maybe get some picks at the trade deadline and try to continue to build for next year and years to come. But Dobes is definitely in the plans, and he's in the plans this season because he's winning them games, 5-0. Don't forget that. So I would definitely try to pick him up. Again, similar to Merilainen, he doesn't carry enough volume to really go out and be like, I'm trading for this guy right now, I need him. But if he's available still, and even if you're in like a really deep league and you think that this guy is going to be someone for the Habs for the future, like him and Fowler, like a 1-2 punch forever, then maybe try to acquire him in your Dynasty League as well, because from what I've heard, he's the real deal, and he's playing like the real fucking deal right now. All right, thank you guys for tuning in. Let me know what you thought of buy low, sell high goalies for the rest of the fantasy hockey season. Shout out to FanDuel Canada for sponsoring the video. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.